Reflections. Chapter 2, Lesson 2, The Pacific Northwest. What to know. How did the geography and climate of the Pacific Northwest affect the American Indians there? Describe how the people of the Pacific Northwest met their needs and adapted to their environment. Describe the cultures of the American Indians of the Pacific Northwest. Vocabulary. Much of this is going to be on Quizlet for you. Harpoon, longhouse, clan, totem pole, economy, network, barter, potlatch. You are there. Spring has finally come. For weeks, the tribe elders have been observing the sky's color, noting the wind's direction, and watching the stars' positions in the sky. Now they have decided that today is a good day to go hunting for a whale. The whale hunters will take the village's biggest canoes. They carry them with their longest, heaviest harpoons. Harpoons are long spears with sharp shell points. If the hunt is successful, there will be singing and dancing to welcome the hunters home. The whalebone artifact at the bottom may have been an art form or a tool, while the whalebone artifact at the top is the carved figure of a walrus, so an art form. Study this picture for a moment. During a whale hunt, the chief harpooner showed his respect for the huge animal by singing a special song, promising to give the whale gifts if it allowed itself to be killed. A region of plenty. This will be your first section in your Cornell notes. So on the left side of your notes, your T-chart, a region of plenty. How were the whale hunting methods of the Makah different from those of the Kwakiutl? Let's read. The American Indians of the Pacific Northwest Cultural Region, also known as the Northwest Coast Region, lived in a place that was very different from the desert Southwest. Nestled between the Pacific Ocean and rugged mountains to the east, the Pacific Northwest region included parts of what are now Oregon, Washington, and Western Canada. Cool ocean winds brought heavy rains to the region, so forests grew tall and thick. These forests and the rivers that ran through them were filled with animals and fish. Among the many groups who lived in the Pacific Northwest were the Kwakiutl, the Makah, and the Chinook. Instead of farming, Indians in the Pacific Northwest met their needs by fishing and hunting and by gathering plants and nuts. Salmon was a staple food for most groups. Whales were also an important resource. Whales supplied not only food, but also fat, which could be melted into oil to burn in lamps. Most groups, including the Kwakiutl, captured only whales that became stranded on the shore. The Makah, however, built dugout canoes to hunt whales at sea. These boats, made from a large hollowed-out log, that's why it's called dugout, were up to 6 feet wide and carried up to 60 people. How were the whale hunting methods of the Makah different from those of the Kwakiutl? Our next section, resources and trade. Set up your Cornell notes with resources and trade on the left side, please. Why was wood important to the American Indians of the Pacific Northwest? Resources and trade. Let's take a closer look at a Pacific Northwest village. So we have a 2-page layout. So look for these things in the pictures. It is believed that many villages along the Northwest coast had hundreds of inhabitants, people who lived there. 1. Northwest Coast Indians used dugouts, dugout canoes, to fish for salmon and to hunt whales. 2. Salmon were dried on racks so that it could be kept for long periods of time. 3. Totem poles stood in front of many homes. 4. Baskets made with long, thin strips of wood were treasured trade items, meaning they were very valuable. What activities are shown in this Pacific Northwest village? Look closely. And let's read. Resources and trade. The enormous trees that grow in the forests of the Pacific Northwest provided the Makah and other groups with wood for boats as well as for houses and tools. The Makah built their villages near the Pacific Ocean, a common location for many Indians in the Pacific Northwest. The doors to the Makah's homes even faced the ocean. The Makah built large wooden houses called longhouses. These rectangular homes were sometimes 60 feet long. Like the longhouses built by the Kwakiutl and other groups, Makah longhouses had a frame made of wooden poles. Planks, or wide boards, were used to cover the walls and floors. Let's see if there's a better picture. Longhouses. The longhouses had slanted roofs that allowed rainwater to run off. Usually, they had no windows. When smoke collected from a cooking fire, planks could easily be removed from the roof to clear the air because the planks were usually not permanently attached. All the members of a clan, or extended family, lived in the same longhouse. This meant that grandparents, parents, aunts and uncles, and children often lived together. Each clan was headed by its oldest member. Older clan members passed down songs, dances, stories, and wood carving skills to younger members. Wood was so useful to the people of the Pacific Northwest that they made almost everything from it. Dishes, spoons, and other utensils were made of wood. So were ceremonial masks that were often used in storytelling. Among the wooden objects carved by Indians in the Pacific Northwest were totem poles, tall posts usually showing one or more characters. The characters represented different animals or spirits, and together they told a story. Some totem poles stood guard at the front of houses. People entered those houses through a hole near the bottom of the totem pole. Other totem poles stood alone, away from the houses, often facing the sea. They were carved to mark graves or to welcome visitors. Steep mountains and thick forest made overland travel, traveling over the land, overland travel. Steep mountains and thick forest made overland travel difficult in the Pacific Northwest, but people could travel long distances on the region's waterways. Sometimes people used these water highways to fish or hunt or to travel for trade. Trading was a large part of this region's economy. An economy is the way the people of a state, region, or country use resources to meet their needs. One of the greatest trading centers was located on the Columbia River at a place now called the Dalles. People from dozens of tribes, some speaking very different languages, traveled hundreds of miles to trade there. So why was wood important to the American Indians of the Pacific Northwest? And our next section, trade and wealth. Set up your Cornell notes, trade and wealth. What was the result of strong trade networks for the Indians of the Northwest Coast? And here we see a painting of a potlatch shows a chief and his wife dressed to display their wealth. All their fancy clothes on. Trade and wealth. The best known traders among the Pacific Northwest Indians were the Chinook. The Chinook lived at the mouth of the Columbia River. The Chinook lived at the mouth of the Columbia River, which they controlled from the coast all the way to the Dalles, about 200 miles upriver. The Chinook and other Pacific Northwest Indians were part of a large trade network. This trade network allowed goods, things, and ideas to be passed from village to village over very long distances. The Dalles was a center of the trade network because many groups gathered there. But the different languages they spoke made communication difficult. The Chinook were able to profit from trading at the Dalles because they developed a unique language for trade. It was made up of Chinook words as well as words borrowed from other Indian languages. This trade language allowed them to barter or exchange goods on behalf of two groups who were unable to trade with each other directly. A plentiful supply of natural resources and a large trade network made many Pacific Northwest groups wealthy. One way they expressed their good fortune was through a celebration known as a potlatch. A potlatch was meant to show wealth. The word itself comes from a trade term that means to give. Historians think that the Kwakiutl, who lived along the coast of what is now Canada, helped develop the potlatch custom. They held potlatches to mark major life events such as births, deaths, and marriages. A Kwakiutl potlatch was a huge celebration lasting up to 10 days and including dancing, food, and speeches. The host of a potlatch gave expensive presents to their guests. Because of the great cost, clan members might spend years getting ready to hold a potlatch. In summary, the rich natural resources of the Pacific Northwest helped create a society focused on hunting and gathering and trade. Many people in this society became very wealthy. They displayed this wealth in expensive ceremonies. And here are some questions for review and discussion.